You're listening to the Oddscast, the original UFC betting podcast that's straight to the point. Hosted by leading MMA oddsmaker Nick Kalikas and MMA journalist Brian Hemminger. They provide you the absolute best UFC betting info, picks, statistics, and analysis from the most respected authority in mixed martial arts betting. MMAOddsBreaker.com. Don't place your wagers without us.
Welcome to the Oddscast, presented by BetDSI. I'm Brian Hemminger, joined today by leading mixed martial arts oddsmaker Nick Kalikas to break down this Saturday's UFC 236 event, which takes place in Atlanta, Georgia. If you're unfamiliar with our format, Nick and I will break down the fight card from top to bottom, providing extensive analysis and a pick for each fight after doing our film study for the event. Looking back at our last event, Kyle Marley lost 1.06 units on his free bet for UFC on ESPN2 on Michael Johnson at minus 106 odds, although he did win his other three premium bets. Kyle has his bets and fantasy MMA picks available now on MMAOddsBreaker.com. Back to the present, UFC 236 features a 13-fight card in total and will be aired on UFC Fight Pass, ESPN, and pay-per-view this Saturday night. Let's dive right in. Now, kicking things off on Fight Pass is a bantamweight contest between Randy Costa, who is 4-0, and Brandon Davis, who is 9-6. Now, Nick, where did this fight open, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Costa opened minus 135, the comeback on Davis at plus 105. Right now, looking over at our sponsored sportsbook, betdsi.eu. Currently at BetDSI, we're looking at Davis at minus 159, the comeback on Costa at plus 142. Real quick plug for BetDSI as well. You guys got to make sure you check them out. Right now, I'm quoting a line from their sportsbook. They actually have three different line options. They have a sportsbook, they have classic book, and US book to choose from. And man, you can get some outrageous value on some of their line margins. I mean, if those of you guys out there that are familiar with pinnacle lines or reduced lines from other places, for example, you can definitely get the same kind of bargain at BetDSI. So look around. Right now, I'm quoting the lines from the sportsbook end of it. And right now, like I said, minus 159 for Davis, the comeback plus 142 on Costa. So obviously, line has flipped, more action coming in Davis's way, rightfully so. He is the experienced vet in this matchup, and he's faced the higher level competition for sure. And there's a lot really of unknowns really with Costa still. He's only 4-0 as a professional in mixed martial arts. Obviously, we know that he's making his UFC debut. So that being said, that's why I think a lot of people are betting Davis, because they think he's a little bit more of the experienced veteran. He's faced better competition throughout his career. They know him a lot better. Even though he's only 1-3 in the UFC, he's faced all high level competition. Whereas Costa, if you look at his resume, he's still really raw. I mean, the guy has not faced nearly the comp level that Davis has. So right away, that's an eyesore for sure. And again, that's why I think you're seeing all the action come Davis's way and people not having that much faith in Costa. But that said, I've been impressed with what we have been able to see from Costa, and with a minimal, information that's out there on him. The guy is a pretty talented fighter. I mean, he's from the Lozon camp, so he's getting good training partners. Of course, Joe Lozon, a very experienced lightweight fighter in the UFC roster for a long time, a very complete fighter. So Costa's getting some really great training. And if you look at his fighting style, man, the guy can definitely strike. He's the kind of guy that throws very unorthodox techniques, but he's very clean and crisp with it, and it's effective. I mean, those kicks that he throws, he follows them up quickly after his punches that set up really well and blend in together nicely. I mean, it's hard to kind of see his roundhouse kicks come towards your head. I mean, that's how slick this guy is, and they're effective when they land. So from what we've seen, this guy has very capable kicking game, obviously punching power as well. If he does get you to the floor, he does have some nasty ground and pound, but that's the area that we're really unsure about more than anything else, is Costa's ground game. His takedown defense, so far everything looks to be okay. But again, that's against lower competition, and he's going to face Davis here, which has been in there, like I said, with a better competition. He's a very well-rounded mixed martial artist in his own right. He could wrestle. Obviously he can strike as well, and he's got a bit of a jiu-jitsu game to go along with it. So Davis does have the overall edge as far as we know right here in this fight. But that said, I kind of lean a little bit more towards Costa. I think I like what I see in him, even though he is a little bit more raw. I think he can give Davis everything he's capable of in this fight. And I think this is going to be a very good test for him, obviously making your UFC debut against somebody like Davis. So I'm kind of on the fence with this. I'm going to actually lean I guess a little bit more towards Costa right now. Not a confident pick. Obviously, you can't be that confident in this fight, being that Costa is so raw at this point. But again, from the flashes that I've seen thus far, I think this guy has a lot of potential. And with the training that he's getting from Lozon, hopefully, he's as game as I think he's going to be in this fight, and he shows up, because I think Costa is going to be a little bit more dangerous. I think he can be a little bit more effective when it comes to the actual striking game here in this spot. But as it goes, the advantage has to shift towards Davis. So that's something to take into consideration. So from a betting perspective right now, there's no way I would probably lay that line, Davis minus 165, 170. It's a dog or pass situation at this point. But those of you got in at the early number early on, I definitely understand why you did it, and I think it was a smart play. So for me right now, I'm going to slightly lean towards Costa, but it's not a confident pick.
Costa has gone 4-0, and all of his wins have been in less than 80 seconds. But, there's a reason that they've been in less than 80 seconds. For one, yes, Costa has a lot of power and clearly is capable of putting people away if he can connect. But you also got to look at who he's been fighting. And his guys that he beat to become 4-0 and earn this UFC opportunity were 0-4, 0-0, 5-9, and 0-1. So it's not exactly like he's been taking on complete killers. And Brandon Davis, while he's not a killer, I mean, this guy is a talented fighter. He pushes a good pace. He mixes things up well. He can take a shot. He can brawl. Like, if he gets into a brawl, that's definitely a style that he can really succeed. And I think that he's more than capable. And also of note, he is dropping down to the bantamweight division. So he's going to have a little bit of a size advantage here. So realistically, this is by far the toughest opponent that Randy Costa's faced in his entire career. And I think he's going to have his hands full. Maybe Costa will start strong, but I don't see him knocking Davis out unless, the extra 10 pounds that Davis is cutting really saps his durability, because that does happen. But I do think that as long as Davis can withstand what Costa brings early, I think that he just wears him down a little bit and takes over as this fight gets into the second and potentially the third rounds. Costa has, really powerful knockout power and head kicks, but he also, it's not like he sets these things up with a bunch of feints and a technique. It's more, he's just winging really powerful punches that you can see coming a mile away. So I think Davis has no problem avoiding the big shots, and as long as Davis, fights smart, and as a veteran with 4 UFC appearances already, I think he will. I think that he's going to be able to handle whatever Costa throws at him, and I think Davis, even if he loses the first round, will win the second and third to at least win a decision, and he might even finish Costa along the way, if Costa starts to slow down, because that's a huge question mark with his conditioning. So I'm going to side with Brandon Davis. I just think the veteran gets the job done here. Now, moving down to the women's flyweight division, we have Poliana Botello, who is 7-2, taking on Lauren Mueller, who is 5-1. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Botello open minus 165, the comeback on Mueller at plus 125. Right now, looking over at BetDSI, we are seeing Botello minus 169, the comeback on Mueller at plus 150. So line margins have tightened up a little bit. 2 action is coming into this fight. This is an interesting fight for sure. I mean, Mueller has looked really good, and then a lot of hype behind her as well, and then she goes out there and basically lays an egg in her last fight. I mean, I think a lot of people were shocked about, her getting beaten, at least early on in that fight, by submission. She got caught in an armbar. So it happens, That being said, like I said, there was a lot of hype on Mueller, so there was a lot of eyeballs that definitely opened up, and maybe Mueller's not exactly, as ready as we all thought at this level. Cause I think sometimes fighters come in, they do all right. There's some hype behind them. We kind of push them far. We expect a lot from them. So maybe, Mueller's a little bit more raw than we originally thought of, but she's definitely a tough chick. She brings it. She's aggressive. I like her fighting style. She's a pretty well-rounded fighter in that regard. Like I said, I know she just got caught on the ground, and obviously that is something that has to be a concern. I mean, against very good grapplers. But that being said, I think Mueller has shown she has a pretty well put together game, and Botello isn't exactly somebody that's going to really look to submit her here in this fight. So style wise, this is a completely different fight than what Mueller just faced. But that said, Botello's definitely a handful for Mueller in this spot as well. She's going to have a little bit of reach, and size over Mueller in this spot. She's also, well, I should say she is moving up to 125 pounds, Botello is. So that's going to be interesting to see the actual strength edge. Mueller should have, you would think, being a more natural 125 pounder, she would have a little bit more power. But I don't know. Botello, I think with her size and frame is going to fill out nicely. So I'm going to be curious to see who actually has the power edge. I think it actually might be Botello in this fight. With that said, she's going to have to use some of that strength and some of her ability to keep the fight upright, because again, she's coming off of a very disappointing loss in her own right against Calvillo. And this is a completely different matchup though for her as well. She's not going to have to be threatened by the ground game of Mueller other than maybe the takedowns. So that said, I think this kind of matches up well for Botello, because I think she's going to be able to keep this fight upright, and that with that, she's going to be able to kind of land a little bit more. Her striking is better than Mueller. I think her strike defense is better than Mueller as well. So I think what happens here is they exchange a little bit back and forth when Botello has the opportunity to keep this fight upright and in space, and she's going to win those striking exchanges and probably bust Mueller up along the way en route to a decision win. So I think Botello's going to do enough here to, again, just keep Mueller at bay, stay off her back, and just outpoint Mueller, bust her up a little bit en route to a pretty 29-28, but a pretty clear type of unanimous decision win, because I just think simply Botello is the better striker. So I find it hard to believe Mueller's going to be able to take advantage of the ground all that much throughout the fight. And if that's not the case, then I think Botello probably will get her hand raised at the end. So the pick is Botello. Where the current price is right now, yeah, it's kind of tricky. I mean, I don't think you want to lay a lot, because like I said, if Mueller does follow the path of the wrestling aspect and get some takedowns, maybe she can grind this out a little bit and steal the decision. But again, I think it's a favorite or pass situation depending on the price, and I'm going to lean towards Botello.
In a pure stand-up fight, Botello is clearly the better striker than Mueller, but there are several intangibles here that you got to take into consideration. I mean, Mueller is stepping in on 6 weeks notice for an injured Paige Van Zandt, so she's not had a full training camp. Botello's moving up in weight to the flyweight division from strawweight, so that's another thing to consider. And particularly with that, I'm not quite sure that this is a super smart decision, because Botello at strawweight, she was pressed into the fence for 15 straight minutes by Pearl Gonzalez, and then she got taken down and submitted by Cynthia Calvillo in her 2 losses. So, you know, she kind of, I mean, I feel like at flyweight, when she's facing bigger and stronger women, she's going to have a bigger problem dealing with girls that can kind of bully her and either push her into the fence or take her down. We'll see how it plays out, but Mueller isn't exactly a huge takedown artist, so I'm not super concerned about that. She is a pretty decent fighter that pushes a good pace, but overall, I mean, Botello is just so much better on the feet. She's accurate, she's powerful. Botello is definitely a dangerous striker. I mean, you look at accuracy, like percentage-wise. I mean, she almost has a 20% or over a 20% advantage on landing strikes. So I think Mueller's going to have a hard time hitting Botello. I think Botello, I mean, as long as this stays standing, I think Botello's going to be in pretty good shape. Now, Mueller does look to take fights to the ground every once in a while, and I think that's probably her best path to victory. I mean, easily her best path to victory, because if she stays in a pure stand-up fight, I think Botello doesn't just win, she might knock her out, because Botello does kind of have that nasty knockout power, if she's given some open space. So, if Mueller can't get this fight to the floor consistently though, I think Botello easily wins it. So it's just going to boil down to, can Mueller get this fight to the ground? And I don't know if she's just going to want to be desperately diving at takedown attempts. And I think overall, Botello lands some good shots. Mueller gets a little desperate, but I think Botello will do enough to get the job done. And I'm not that scared of Mueller's top game or her submissions. So I think even if she does get some takedowns, Botello can either force a stand up or potentially get back to her feet and get back to work. So I'm going to side with the superior striker here in Botello. Now, moving up to the bantamweight division, we have Montel Jackson, who is 7-1, taking on Andre Sukumtat, who is 13-6. Now, Nick, where did this fight open, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Jackson opened minus 350, the comeback on Sukumtat at plus 250. And right now what you're seeing over at BetDSI is Jackson at minus 500, the comeback on Sukumtat at plus 405. So needless to say, everybody coming in on the Jackson train. Don't blame him. I mean, Jackson has looked great in the UFC, especially obviously with his last win. I mean, that's exactly what the doctor ordered for him. I mean, to come out and just demolish a very game opponent like Brian Kelleher, that's not an easy thing to do, put it that way. I mean, that's very impressive because Kelleher is definitely a tough out. So Jackson had to rebound. I mean, he had suffered a disappointing loss to Simon in the fight before that in a very competitive decision, but I mean, he basically got outgrinded there a little bit. And Jackson was a hyped prospect coming in with a lot at stake here. I mean, to get back on track, like I said, there was a lot of potential in Jackson. I mean, he's only 26 years old. He has that size and frame for the bantamweight division to go with that athleticism, the wrestling background. He's got striking. I mean, he is really the total package. He's now shown us his submission game to go along with it. So there's a lot to like about Jackson. So again, even though he suffered a close competitive decision loss in his debut, looking really good in his second fight. Now we're looking to see what he's going to do here against another game opponent, Sukumtat. Sukumtat's been really solid as well. He's honestly an underrated fighter. Now, he had a very impressive win over Jonathan Martinez. Martinez, I don't think a lot of people are going to give Sukumtat enough credit for that win. Martinez is a very good opponent. I know, he was outsized in that fight a little bit by Sukumtat, but still, that said, I think it was a very quality win. Martinez is not an easy guy to beat. And then his win, obviously, a couple fights before that over Luke Sanders was a very quality win. And it shows what Sukumtat could do. I mean, he can be trailing in a fight. He has fight-changing power. I mean, if he lands one strike, I mean, he has that ability to completely change a fight and put somebody out. So Jackson has to be cautious because Sukumtat on the feet especially can bang. There's no doubt about that. And Jackson's going to look to do just that. I mean, Jackson's not afraid to go out there and mix it up. I mean, he's very capable of doing that as well. So on the feet, I expect fireworks back and forth. I actually think Jackson's length will do him well here, and he'll land a little bit more on Sukumtat, even though, again, he's got to have to be cautious. And if I was Jackson, I'd mix in the wrestling and just the complete MMA game that he does have a big advantage over Sukumtat as a whole. Even though Sukumtat in his own right, his overall game isn't bad, but I think Jackson just trumps him in pretty much every area. Minus, again, the striking will be interesting, but I do think that Jackson even has an edge on the feet with his length and with the way he goes about striking. So I understand why everybody came in Jackson's way. I think this is a very good fight for him, and I think he's going to showcase all his skill and get a very solid win over a very game Sukumtat. So hard to bet at the window right now, minus 500. I wouldn't recommend a bet here. I think you sit back and watch this fight, and it should be fun, and you should appreciate both guys because this is skill going at it here at 135 pounds for sure. So the pick is Jackson. Not a big surprise. I think he does come away with a win here.
And I'm going to go with Jackson as well, but I completely agree that you can't sleep on Sukumtat. I mean, in a pure stand-up fight, Sukumtat lands ferocious counters. He mixes things up well. He has some strong kicking game, and I think that he has some really good power. So if Jackson's screwing around on the feet too long, I mean, he could absolutely get put away. My main issue with Sukumtat is, fight IQ. I mean, this guy, he could be potentially 4 or 5-0 in the UFC. You go back in the Sean O'Malley fight, O'Malley clearly had an issue with his foot, and Sukumtat just started shooting in for takedowns. Which was literally the only thing that could keep O'Malley in the fight after O'Malley had won the first round or two. And then O'Malley ends up winning the decision because if Sukumtat had just struck with him and O'Malley kept falling down, he'd have won by TKO. And then Sukumtat dropped his opponent 3 times when he faced Alejandro Perez, but couldn't follow up and ended up losing a decision. I think the only time in UFC history a fighter has had 3 knockdowns and lost a fight. And then, he just had a bit of inactivity against Morales in his UFC debut. So there's been time and time again that Sukumtat has the skills to win and doesn't just put it together enough. Granted, I thought he looked good in his last fight, but I just don't know if it's enough because Montel Jackson is just an extremely talented athlete. He's going to have a 5-inch reach here, which should help make up for Sukumtat's power and technique on the feet. I think it'll allow Jackson to hang with Sukumtat on the feet and land a few shots of his own, and it'll probably open Sukumtat up enough that Jackson can employ that wrestling that is a really strong part of his base. Jackson has excellent takedown accuracy. He actually has 100% takedown accuracy so far in the UFC, which is pretty crazy. Granted in small sample size, but still. I think it's only a matter of time until Jackson gets this fight to the floor. Sukumtat will have his opportunities to land some shots along the way, but unless he really clips Jackson on the way in for a takedown attempt with like some kind of knee to the dome, I think Jackson will get takedowns and secure rounds and at least win a decision, if not potentially get a finish along the way on the ground. So my pick's going to be Montel Jackson. I think that explosive takedown game is going to be the biggest part of it. Now, moving on to the main event of the Fight Pass prelims, we have Curtis Millender, who is 17-4, taking on Belal Muhammad, who is 14-3. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Millender opened -175. The comeback of Muhammad at +135. Right now, what we're seeing over at BetDSI is Muhammad at -135. The comeback of Millender +120. So, again, another spot where the line flipped and a lot of action coming in Muhammad's way. Not surprised here either. I mean, Millender has been a very exciting fighter, a very improved fighter, but in his last fight, obviously, he getting blown out like he did and exposed on the ground. I think it opened up a lot of eyes. And a lot of people are starting to respect Muhammad a little bit more. And he is a very complete fighter in his own right. So these guys are more known for standing and banging and what they can deliver on the feet, both of them. But make no mistake about it. I mean, Muhammad has the more complete overall game. He's capable of wrestling and getting his opponents to the ground. And his submission game is actually not that bad either. I know he doesn't have he's not going to be the one you think of actually going out there submitting people, but he is capable of getting a submission on the ground as well. So that said, Millender's biggest kryptonite has always been his ground game, and that's another problem. Obviously, like I said, it was exposed last time, and I mean, it's been an issue in his past as well. Now he's gotten better. His takedown defense has improved, and of course, on the feet, I think he's gotten better as well. So Millender has never been better in his career, despite coming off that loss. I mean, he's always going to be a threat with that length, with that power and ability and accuracy that he has on the feet. He's definitely the better striker of the two. Obviously, with the longer legs and those kicks, you got to be careful. I mean, if Muhammad keeps the space and doesn't get that timing right to where he can close that gap. I mean, Millender he lifts up with one of those kicks. I mean, he could definitely put Muhammad to sleep at any time. So, and Muhammad has been a bit chinny. He's only been officially knocked out once in his career. That said, he's been rocked in several fights. Now, again, he's kind of defensively improved, in that aspect as well. So you got to give him a little bit of credit there. And he's faced some pretty stern competition along the way. So Muhammad's getting a little bit better in that aspect, but still he's hittable, and I don't think he wants to play that game. So the early action coming in Muhammad's way, a lot of it was based on the fact that he can out wrestle Millender. And if he does get him to the floor, Millender could be in some problems here as well. Muhammad could use his wrestling to kind of grind out a decision win over Millender as well. And Muhammad's not going to be a fish out of the water on the feet. I mean, his boxing's very good. He's got good, powerful leg kicks as well. So, like I said, Muhammad's game in all aspects of the game, but with Millender, he's got to be cautious about the feet. So I think Muhammad's complete game is going to be the difference here. I think he will be able to mix things up. And if he fights smart, obviously he should do that against a guy like Millender. So the pick is Muhammad. I understand why all of you guys came in that way early on. I mean, he's a slight favorite right now for a reason as well. I think it's right. He should be a slight favorite because he is the more complete mixed martial artist. Much respect to Millender, but I think Muhammad is the right side. So my pick is Muhammad. And again, if you're going to bet this fight, I could see, like I said, Muhammad possibly having some value depending on where the line goes. If it keeps on climbing here past 135, if it gets up to the 150 range, I would stay away. But if you're getting probably close to this number, it might not be bad to think about Muhammad as a small bet.
Yeah, and the wrestling aspect of Muhammad's game is the reason that I'm going to pick him as well. I mean, you saw in Millender's last fight, he got exposed a little bit by Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. Zaleski is a guy that had, I think, about 15% takedown accuracy in his MMA career, and easily was able to get Millender down and then just advanced position and then eventually got a submission. Millender really stood no chance once that fight went to the floor. On the feet, Millender is long. He uses his distance well. I mean, and he's dangerous if he's able to stick around on the outside and pop jabs and kicks. But if somebody gets inside on him, it's a completely different fight. And that's kind of the way that Belal Muhammad fights. I mean, he pushes a strong pace. He moves forward aggressively. He puts pressure on his opponents. And I mean, it allows him to be competitive in the stand-up in fights that he has no business being competitive in the stand-up. And by mixing in takedown attempts as well, that really can be the equalizer here, because in a pure stand-up fight, I definitely favor Millender. I think that Millender could land a head kick and end this fight at any moment, because Muhammad, while, as Nick mentioned, doesn't have a lot of knockout losses, he does get cracked on the feet every once in a while, and he definitely can be put out. So Millender is definitely going to be capable of finishing this fight, especially if Muhammad is stuck on the outside. But I think as soon as Muhammad gets inside, I think he's going to grab a hold of Millender and drag this fight to the floor. Now, I'm not convinced that Muhammad has a strong enough top control game to get a finish on the ground. Maybe by TKO if he can really pound out some strong ground and pound strikes. But for the most part, I expect that Muhammad will be putting pressure on Millender, making him fight off his back foot, getting inside, and then eventually getting takedowns. And then I think that he kind of grinds this one out, utilizing takedowns and top control. So my pick's going to be Belal Muhammad, but I am definitely concerned about him getting caught along the way, especially if he's a little too overeager to get a takedown. Now, this brings us to the ESPN preliminary card. We have a bantamweight contest between Boston Salmon, who is 6-1, and Khalid Taha, who is 12-2. Now, Nick, where did this fight open, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Salmon opened -150, the comeback on Taha at +110. Right now, looking over at BetDSI, we are seeing Salmon -143, the comeback on Taha at +126. The line margins, again, have tightened up a little bit. Two action coming into this fight. It's tough. I mean, honestly, Salmon is the one with the more hype for sure. He's the prospect. And what a prospect he is, man. If you look back at some of his fights, you could tell what kind of ability this guy has. I mean, talk about speed, power, clean technique. I mean, beautiful to watch Salmon strike on the feet. He has been out for a couple years, so we should say it off the rip as well. I mean, so he's been out a little bit of time here, and he's coming off of Dana White Contender Series win. That he was very impressive, honestly, watching him perform against very solid competition on that show. But this is his official UFC debut, and they're not giving him an easy fight here against Taha. But that said, I mean, if you look back at any one of Salmon's fights and you want to pick something out, it's definitely that loss to Riley. And if you look at that, it was a close fight that he could have obviously won on the scorecards as well. But the reason the judges had difficulty scoring that fight, again, it's a questionable decision loss for Salmon, is he didn't really put his foot on the gas at times. I mean, so he could be a little bit too tentative, and I think that kind of cost him in spots, even though, again, arguably he won that decision, and he could be an undefeated fighter right now. But that's, I think, the issue with Salmon. He doesn't really let his hands or his feet go enough at times, right? But he is a very complete fighter from what we've seen thus far. I mean, the guy has decent takedown defense. He's got good offensive wrestling. He can keep the fight upright. And then again, he's got that precision and power along with very quick hands. Now in Taha, he's going to face a smaller fighter, but Taha has some speed. And if you look back, the similarities between him and Riley, I think honestly Taha's a better version of the guy that beat Salmon in that controversial decision. So Taha's legit, man. He comes, he brings it. His cardio solid. He's proven, and even though he suffered a loss in his UFC debut, again, that was a different type of fighter. In this case here, Salmon likes to stand and bang, so does Taha. So I think here, they're both really catered for each other. Now, can Taha avoid getting clipped by some of Salmon's power and length, that he has an advantage over Taha in this aspect of things? I don't know. It's going to be tough because Taha, again, he's going to be the one kind of pushing a little bit of a higher pace. He's going to be probably a little bit quicker because he is going to be the shorter fighter, and he's kind of like a spark plug. But that said, I think Salmon is definitely the harder hitter, and I think Taha's aggression is actually going to work in Salmon's favor here. I think it's going to end up making Salmon fight a little bit more aggressive and landing a little bit more often. And that said, Taha could be in trouble. So I also think Salmon might look for a takedown and get offensive top position along the way and probably grind out Taha. Not that he's going to look to do that the whole way through, but I think he could probably steal some rounds if it is competitive in that regard as well. So really, everything for me is pointing to Salmon, even though Taha is a very legit and respectable opponent to make your official debut, and it's going to be a tough test. I still think that Salmon, sky's the limit for him, man. Everything that I've seen, I think this kid can get more confidence. He can get better fight by fight, and he's the type of fighter that in that 2 years that he's had in between fights here, he could definitely take his game to a whole nother level and improve that much more. So I'm expecting some really good things from Salmon, and I expect him to come out here and look good. I wouldn't even be surprised if he finishes Taha. Taha's definitely a tough guy to finish. He hasn't been finished in his professional career. Now, well, I shouldn't say he hasn't been knocked out. But that said, I mean, if anybody could do it, it's a guy like Salmon. So the pick is Salmon. And again, depending on where this line goes, there could be some value on Salmon. If this line drops any further, I mean, the door could open up for a bet on Salmon as well. I really think that the guy has that much potential. So let's see how this fight plays out, but I'm going to pick Salmon to win.
I'm definitely throwing out Taha's UFC debut because he was facing someone that was looking to take the fight to the floor. And that's probably not, at least in my opinion, what Boston Salmon's going to do. I think both of these guys being talented strikers who primarily look to get the knockout, I think that they're going to stay on the feet and put on a show for the fans. And that's exactly what I think the UFC was hoping by putting this fight together. Boston Salmon is an extremely accomplished striker, has a very good counter-striking game, and I think that Taha's aggression is going to play right into that. There's another factor I think that hasn't been talked about a lot that could be an important thing here is Taha was supposed to fight Salmon back in November, but he had a knee injury. So, how healthy is he coming into this fight? Is he still going to have that same spring in his step? Will he have the same trust in his kicking game? Is he going to be able to plant as easily? I'm definitely a little concerned about him potentially rushing back, just to get an opportunity for this fight. So Taha, I mean, he's dangerous, and at times Salmon, being a counter striker allows his opponent to dictate the fight too much, but I think with Taha being so aggressive, as Nick mentioned, it will play into Salmon's style. It'll open up more opportunities for counters. And I think Salmon will be able to land not just that one perfect counter, but consistent multiple counters, and then even fire back with combinations. So this should be a very entertaining fight for however long it lasts. It could go 15 minutes of both of these guys just throwing down. Or it could be where Taha is a little overeager and gets caught with that shot he doesn't see coming and gets put out. I could definitely see that happening as well. I just think Boston Salmon is the superior technical striker, and it should show here. And I think that the counters are going to be particularly effective. So my pick's going to be Boston Salmon. I think he at least wins a decision. Now, moving up to the welterweight division, we have Max Griffin, who is 14-6, taking on UFC newcomer Zalim Imadaev, who is 8-0. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Imadaev opened minus 215, the comeback on Griffin at plus 165. And right now what we're seeing over at BetDSI is Griffin still the underdog. Imadaev minus 114, Griffin plus 101. I'm sorry. So again, this is what I'm talking about though with BetDSI. I mean, a lot of books right now, if you're looking out there, they would probably have a 20-cent line gap. And right now you're seeing a 13-cent line margin over here at BetDSI with Imadaev at minus 114, the comeback on Griffin at plus 101. So that's some good value there with the margins for sure compared to a lot of other spots. So check out BetDSI. Now that said, this is a close fight, and Imadaev opened a 2-1 favorite over a very game opponent in Griffin in his debut. Obviously, it was too high. So those people that came in early on and gobbled up that plus money on Griffin, I understand it. And that was definitely some value there to be had, no doubt. This is another scenario. We were talking about Costa earlier not being, as experienced as Davis. And, a lot of times we throw that experience factor out there and it doesn't really mean a lot. Well, in the Davis-Costa fight, it can definitely impact that fight. And here's another case where Imadaev hasn't really faced a lot of good competition. I mean, I think he's a little bit more prepared than Costa, honestly, in this spot. And, from what I've seen, I do like Imadaev's talent as well. So this is another rare case for me where I think that a debuting guy can actually, even though he's a can crusher to some extent, he can actually come in here and make some waves, especially getting matched up with a very good fighter like Griffin. Griffin's another one of these guys, man. We're talking about Davis not having an easy road and having a subpar UFC record at 1-3. Griffin so far is 2-4 in the UFC, but he's faced very solid competition as well. I mean, so he's overperformed at times, and I mean, he's been right in there in every fight, it seems, Griffin overall, pretty much. So that said, I mean, Griffin's a very tough out, and Imadaev coming in here, making his debut at only age 24, that's really a tough task to handle or to ask. But man, for what you see from Imadaev, I think he can hang in there with Griffin pretty well. I mean, on the feet, Imadaev has a lot of good power. His clinch game is really impressive to look at. He definitely lands some good knees and elbows from that clinch. He's aggressive, offensively whether it's on the feet or the ground. So if this guy gets top position, I mean, he starts unloading with some very solid ground and pound. His takedown defense looks to be good. His conditioning overall looks to be okay. On the feet, he's dangerous. He throws even spinning techniques and he's accurate with them as well. And like I said, overall, I think he's pretty impressive, but they've been against lower tier competition. So it's kind of tough to gauge sometimes how good he's going to be. But I think, like I said, from what I've seen, I really believe that this guy's a talented fighter. And the issues that we've seen from Griffin in the past, I mean, he's faced, like I said, really strong competition, but he has been clipped. And defensively on the feet, it has been an issue at times. He's been rocked. Again, another case where he's only been knocked out officially once, but he's been damaged and hurt, often in fights as well. And Imadaev is the type of guy that he's got thunder in his fist. He's got bricks in his hands, man. If this guy lands on you, you definitely feel it. So I think this matchup really bodes well for Imadaev. I think he can, with that killer instinct that he has, he can land a little bit more frequently and a little bit more clean on Griffin, and that could definitely sway the fight in his favor. He gets top position, maybe drop some ground and pound as well. I think he can win this fight. So I'm actually going to side with the debuting fighter here in Imadaev, even though he hasn't faced the level of competition Griffin has. I see some promise in him, and I think that some of the potential that I see is going to come into par here, and he's going to get a very solid debut win over Griffin. And then we're going to really see people opening up their eyes and believing in this guy a little bit more. So I do need to see it first, though. This is a legit test, but I think it's one Imadaev can pass. So my pick is Imadaev. And again, at the current price, even though early action was, and early value was on Griffin, now we might start seeing some actual value, Imadaev's way. So keep an eye out for that. There might be a bet or two to make his way.
Imadaev is definitely an exciting striker, but I'm a little bit concerned that he's a little too wild. He's taken on somebody in Max Griffin that's been around the block now in the UFC a little bit. Griffin's been in there against some pretty tough opponents, and he's clearly had some quality victories in that time. And I just think Imadaev, similar to Kondo earlier in the card, he's just hasn't faced that strong level of competition consistently. Even though Griffin hasn't had the best success going 2-4 in his UFC run, and I honestly thought he should have won his last one against Thiago Alves. I still say that Imadaev is potentially getting in a little bit over his head. Now, Imadaev is powerful, and he has some pretty devastating knees if they can connect, especially some flying knees. As Nick mentioned, he has good knees in the clinch. So that's something that Griffin will have to watch out for. But Griffin is a pretty powerful striker in his own right, and he pushes a good pace. Landing 4 strikes a minute. I think that Griffin can mix things up, potentially even take this fight to the floor. So Imadaev, in his debut fight here, I think he'll be dangerous, but I just can't quite convince myself that he's going to get the win. Griffin always seems to have close fights against tough opponents, and I think this fight will be close, but I think the veteran Griffin ekes this one out and potentially, like a split decision type of scenario. I just think potentially this is a little bit too much too soon for Imadaev. Maybe he should have faced somebody a little bit lower on the totem pole for his UFC debut. So my pick's going to be Max Griffin. Now, dropping down to the flyweight division, we have Wilson Hayes, who is 23-9, taking on Alexander Pantoja, who is 20-3. Now, Nick, where did this fight open, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Pantoja opened minus 245 to come back on Hayes at plus 175. Right now, looking over at BetDSI, Pantoja is down to minus 156 to come back on Hayes at plus 138. So line margins have tightened up a little bit as well, and obviously more action coming in Hayes' way. And I understand it. Again, another spot where the line opened up way too high. And another reason why is the wrestling. I mean, a lot of people believe that Hayes, he does what he does, man. The guy has a phenomenal ground game. I mean, his striking is not bad, but against half the division, I mean, he's going to get outstruck by most of the guys in the flyweight division. That's not what Hayes is all about. Hayes is all about the grappling, about wrestling, getting you down, grinding you out, submitting you. And I mean, he's really obviously good at doing that. And that's why he's won, most of the fights that he has throughout his career. And Pantoja, on the other hand, he has had some difficulties with guys getting him down. I mean, his takedown defense, I believe, is officially around 60%. Not awful, but against guys that look to get you down and control you a little bit, I mean, that could be a problem. And that's exactly what Hayes is going to look to do here. I know that I believe there's some footage out there or whatever he's saying he's going to knock out Pantoja. That's whatever. That's not the case here. I mean, maybe he could try, but I think Hayes is not going to want to go down that road because Pantoja is definitely the better striker of the two. He has a solid edge on the feet. I think he's more dangerous overall. Obviously, Pantoja is also a very good grappler in his own right, so it's not like he's going to be out of his realm on the ground. But make no mistake, if he gets in some grappling exchanges with Wilson Hayes, Hayes should be able to win some of those battles and probably end up in top position, and that's what's probably going to win him the fight. For Hayes, he has to basically do what he did in his last fight. He was able to outgrind, win in his last fight and get the W there in a very close competitive fight. And he needs to kind of really follow that same blueprint against Pantoja here. I just don't think it's going to happen for him. I think he's going to have some moments in this fight where he's going to be looking for those takedowns, and Pantoja's takedown defense is actually going to be up to par enough to keep this fight standing, keep the space, and deliver some damage to Hayes along the way. So I don't know. I know a lot of people are banking on Hayes getting this fight to the ground. And again, at the opening odds and the opening price and the drop and all that, I understand why the value was taken there. But as this fight gets a little bit closer and the line starts dropping, it gets interesting because I do think Pantoja is, again, a little bit more dependable at this point of his career, other than the only wild card being if Hayes can dominate the ground game or get those takedowns and grind them out. Outside of that, like I said, I think Pantoja is going to have several spots in this fight where he can make this fight difficult for Hayes. So I'm actually going to go against the grain here, against the early action. But again, respect to you guys that took that plus money. I understand it. But as far as a pure pick goes, I'm going to lean Pantoja's way. Even at the betting window, though, right now, I wouldn't necessarily lay that kind of chalk at minus 150, 160 because you do have that the factor of the ground game coming in and playing, obviously a big impact in this fight. So with that said, I'm not confident enough that Pantoja can keep this fight upright enough to win it. But I do think, again, I'm picking him because I do think that he has a spot here to get a very solid win. And I think, if anything, Pantoja is the one on the rise. And even though Hayes has looked okay recently, off and on, I think Hayes is definitely, his best years are behind him. And we're eventually going to see Hayes start getting on a losing streak. And this could be the start of it here with Pantoja. So the pick is Pantoja. I think he's just a little bit more on the rise right now, and it's a good spot and a good time to get a guy like Wilson Hayes for him.
And Pantoja can definitely win this fight, especially if Wilson Hayes follows through with his attempt to try to knock him out, because, while Hayes is an okay striker, he just does not have a very good chin anymore at this point in his career. I mean, it seems like he gets clipped and hurt in just about every single one of his fights during the stand-up portion. There's moments where he's in trouble. So he does not want to be in a stand-up fight with Pantoja. Pantoja is a talented fighter. I mean, he's well-rounded, has a decent striking game, has a strong submission game, but I do feel like there is a potential for him to lose this fight because of Wilson Reis's biggest strength, which is his top control game, his ability to take fights to the ground and win fights there. I mean, that's what he relied on that brought him all the way up to an opportunity to fight for the UFC flyweight title against Demetrius Johnson. Now, obviously he was overmatched in that fight, but I think that Pantoja is still vulnerable in that department. I mean, you saw it in his lone UFC loss against Dustin Ortiz. You know, a guy just put a lot of pressure on him, and he just wasn't able to withstand that. And then even in his fight on The Ultimate Fighter, he took on a guy that, this Japanese guy that's known for grinding fights out, and he was able to do that against him. And even way back in the day, Pantoja lost a fight to Jasir Formiga on the ground. So I think if Wilson Reis is able to succeed in getting takedowns and getting this fight to the floor, then there is a huge path to victory for him. It's not going to potentially be the most entertaining thing because I don't think Reis is going to want to give Pantoja a lot of space because Pantoja is a talented ground fighter. But if Reis is able to consistently take Pantoja down and get top position, I think there's definitely a strong case that he's going to be able to grind out a decision victory here. I mean, the main thing is he just have to be careful about getting clipped along the way. And as long as he doesn't do that, I think Reis is going to be in a good position because Demetrius Johnson is the only person that's been able to grapple and submit Reis. So I think Wilson Reis is going to get takedowns, and I think he's going to win this fight. Now, this takes us to the main event of the preliminary card in the lightweight division. We have Jalen Turner, who is 8-4, taking on Matt Frivola, who is 6-1-1. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Turner opened -165, Frivola +125 right now over at BetDSI. Turner's down to -128, Frivola's +115, so line margins have tightened up a little bit. And there is a little bit more action coming in Frivola's way, but I mean, not a whole lot. So there is two-way action coming in this fight as well. Not a huge decision either way. And it's a tough one, man, at the betting window, honestly. I mean, Frivola, I think he redeemed himself a little bit. I know he didn't get the W, but I think a lot of people were kind of surprised in his performance last time out. I mean, I think he needed to rebound and prove to everybody that he belonged on the UFC roster. So coming in there and getting a decision draw, majority draw, whatever, against Veneta. Veneta, obviously a very respectable UFC competitor. I think opened up some eyes and people, how Frivola performed in that fight. It was definitely respectable. So there is going to be a little bit of a respect factor that increases with him. And man, Frivola really is a very good fighter. He's aggressive. He has some strength. He's got some well-rounded skill overall. He's got some power on the feet. The biggest weakness for Frivola, obviously, is his defense, and he is hittable, and you can rock him a little bit on the feet. That's the scary part about Frivola. But other than that, he pushes a very high pace. You know what you're getting from him, man. He's going to come at you, be in your face. I mean, he's just a pain to deal with in the octagon for sure for most fighters. So I like it actually, because if Frivola is the type of fighter that if he doesn't get knocked out and he doesn't get, finished out there, he's going to end up stepping up his game and probably winning on the cards in most cases. So he's a very difficult fighter, to really beat as far as that aspect of the game, I think, on the scorecards at least. So that said, with Turner, I don't know. I'm not really that sold on him. I understand the guy has, the athleticism, the reach, the length, that build. I mean, he's a very busy striker overall. He's got some accuracy. He's got some skill for sure. I just not really that sold on him. I mean, he showed a bit of a weak chin in his own right, in the past, and obviously getting knocked out. I mean, he was performing relatively well against Luque, and then he did get caught in that fight as well. He rebounded nicely though in his last fight against Potter, but you know what? In my opinion, Potter's one of those guys that barely made the UFC roster. So again, lower tier competition. So I'm not exactly sold on that win quite yet. That said, with Turner, I mean, he does have that kind of knockout power. And again, with that size, athleticism, that reach, in Frivolo's defense on the feet, I mean, this is what makes it tough for me here, because I think Frivolo's honestly the better fighter, and I trust him a little bit more overall. But I think Turner, the way he matches up with Frivola here, if Frivola doesn't land on him, again, Turner's probably going to have a little bit more effective striking at range, and that could be some big issues for Frivola, because one thing Turner has is definitely has some knockout power. So I'm swaying a little bit more Turner's way just because of stylistic matchup here. But make no mistake, if this fight hits the scorecards, I think it's definitely a winnable fight for Frivola. So, like I said, I don't really trust Turner. Or if it goes deeper, I mean, Frivola might be able to land and catch that chin of Turner's as well. So, Turner, I'm going to side with a little bit more. This is one of those picks that I'm going to check out the weigh-ins, and I'm going kind of back and forth on, obviously, myself, to be honest with you. So check out our MMA OddsBreaker stat picks to get my final selection here, as I always say in that little disclaimer spot, because I do think Frivola is the better mixed martial artist. But I'm going to side with Turner because, like I said, I think Frivola's just going to eat too many punches, and with Turner's knockout power and that reach advantage and the skill that he does have on the feet, he does let his hands go. I think that could be a bad stylistic matchup for Frivola. So I'm leaning with Turner. I think he probably can do the damage on the feet. But if not, I tell you what, Frivola can steal this fight on the scorecards or get a late finish. So that said, stay away from this fight. It's a dog or pass situation either way, honestly, at the betting window. But my pure pick right now is going to be a little bit more towards Turner.
Frivola definitely is a capable, well-rounded fighter here, but Jalen Turner is just so powerful, and he has such a huge size advantage in this fight that I just don't see how Frivola is going to be able to get inside without eating some monster shots and getting knocked out. Frivola is 6 inches shorter. He's giving up 6 inches in reach, and Jalen Turner is one of the most powerful strikers in the lightweight division. I mean, you saw that in that last fight. I mean, he just obliterated Callan Potter in 53 seconds. And Matt Frivola has already had a fight where he took on somebody that he was more well-rounded than, that he probably should have won, and got knocked out in 60 seconds. So if Polo Reyes can knock out Frivola, I definitely think Jalen Turner can do it. I think Turner's more explosive. I think Turner has more pure punching power. I think Frivola's in for a world of hurt here. But if for some reason Frivola is able to get inside and get a hold of Turner and drag him to the canvas, then potentially he has a shot. But I just think that that's asking a lot, especially considering the size difference here. And I think it's going to be really difficult for Frivola to get inside Turner's reach. I think he's going to eat too many shots. I think he's going to get hurt, and I think Turner finishes him along the way. But stranger things have happened. But I just don't think this fight ends up close. I think Turner puts Frivola away in the first round. So Turner's going to be my pick. Now, moving on to the pay-per-view main card, we have a rematch in the light heavyweight division as Ovince St. Preux, who is 23-12, takes on Nikita Krylov, who is 24-6. Now, Nick, where did this fight open, and how has the public shifted things so far?
OSP, Ovince St. Preux, open minus 155. They come back on Krylov at plus 115. And right now, what you're seeing over at BetDSI is Krylov, the slight favorite right now. And he is coming in at minus 112, the comeback, even money on OSP. So basically a 12-cent line margin right there. So again, another spot where you can see the value of DSI's lines. So minus 112, even money. Krylov, the slight favorite here. Line did flip. Man, this is another tough one because obviously from their first fight, the original fight, OSP obviously exposed Krylov on the ground. OSP has a better ground game. He has a better wrestling, and he definitely knows the blueprint to beat Krylov. But that said, since the two have last fought, Krylov has looked better. He's gotten better. He's a lot more dangerous, a lot more confident. And I think he's got momentum on his side, where OSP honestly has looked worse and worse. And I think he's honestly a shell of what he was, and he's definitely a declined fighter. Krylov's a younger fighter. I think if Krylov can keep this upright, he's probably going to get this fight, going his way this time. I think he is the more dangerous striker. OSP is a lot more hittable, and I don't trust his chin as much right now either. So again, it's all going to come down to, can Krylov keep this fight standing? If he gets put on the ground, I think it's going to be a repeat performance. Maybe it might not be a Von Flue choke, but I think OSP will find a way to beat Krylov on the ground if he gets to the ground. So Krylov's takedown defense has improved, but has it improved enough? I don't know. I mean, that's a question here, and that's what makes this a very difficult fight. The UFC kind of throwing Krylov a bone here, obviously. I mean, let's call it what it is. I don't think there's much use of OSP other than being a gatekeeper at this point, where as crazy as it sounds, Krylov can actually get pushed towards a UFC title shot with a win over OSP. And if they keep him on the right track, I mean, he could be exciting enough and one of these guys that, keeps momentum going his way and eventually, who knows, maybe get a title shot. So, I mean, we've seen some questionable title shots as of late. Not disrespecting Anthony Smith. I mean, he obviously won fights to get there and whatnot, but I mean, look at the fighters that are getting thrown at John Jones right now. Why not Krylov eventually down the road? We could definitely see it, as crazy as that sounds again. And it all starts by winning these type of fights. And again, the UFC's kind of throwing one bone here. Hey, go out there and get your redemption here over OSP, a declining fighter. That's why I think they made this matchup. Are they going to get their wish? I don't know. A lot of times that stuff backfires, honestly. So, but the push is definitely towards Krylov here. I'm going to side with him as well. Hopefully he keeps it upright. But again, it's not another confident pick. I mean, you can't be at this point. I mean, OSP did expose him on the ground, and I think OSP does have the better ground game. So it's all up to OSP here, really. If he fights smart and he's capable of getting his fight to the ground, he's going to win it. But I'm going to side with Krylov because I do think he understands what is at stake here. And I think he's going to probably keep this upright or find his way on the feet and probably land and put OSP out. This fight is not going to the cards. Krylov has never been to the scorecards. So we know that's not going to happen again. I mean, this fight's definitely ending inside. It's either going to be OSP winning on the ground or Krylov knocking OSP out. I'm going to side with Krylov this time. Again, it's kind of written for him to win. Let's see if it happens.
It's always been difficult for me to pick Nikita Krylov to win fights because he just has such a bad ground game and instincts on the ground. I mean, Joe Rogan has famously, poked fun at him for turning the wrong direction, trying to escape submissions, and it was evident when they fought the last time that OSP was clearly the superior ground fighter when Krylov just wouldn't let go of a guillotine attempt, and OSP von flued him and ended up getting the submission. And we've seen Krylov get exposed on the ground in his return to the UFC against Jan Blachowicz, a guy that really isn't known for having a strong submission game, but Blachowicz took Krylov down and then tapped him out with an arm triangle choke. So Krylov definitely can be exposed on the canvas. I think his last 3 losses have all been by submission. He is dangerous on the feet, and I mean, he's capable of getting submissions in his own right offensively, but it's more the defending thing that is a concern for me. So, clearly, I think OSP is starting to trend down. I mean, we've seen him get knocked out now. We've seen him, lose a couple fights in a row. So I do think that he is a declining fighter at this point in his career, but it might still be enough to get the win. I mean, Krylov is definitely still improving, but the ground difference, if OSP is able to get this fight to the floor, I think Krylov's in trouble because OSP knows, he has some tricks up his sleeve on the canvas. I still remember back when he was in Strikeforce and watching him pull off multiple calf slicer attempts and just all these other crazy submissions that he was able to pull off or attempt on the ground. I mean, just being a tremendous athlete with some good ground skill. So I think that if this fight goes to the floor, Nikita Krylov's in big trouble. And I'm going to side with OSP. I think, yes, Nikita Krylov is capable of finishing this fight if he if he can catch OSP in the stand-up portion. But I just think OSP is going to be smart here and crowd Krylov a little bit along the fence and look for a takedown and look for a finish with a submission. So I think OSP repeats history here because the path to defeat or the recipe for success against Nikita Krylov is evident at this point. And I think that OSP is talented enough to take advantage of that again. So OSP is going to be my pick. Now, moving on, in the welterweight division, we have Alan Jouban, who is 16-6, taking on Dwight Grant, who is 9-2. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Joban opened minus 155. The comeback on Grant at plus 115. And right now what we're seeing over at BetDSI is Joban at minus 112. The comeback on Grant even money. So again, more action coming in Grant's way. I get it. I understand it. I mean, I don't trust Joban personally myself either. He's been out for over a year. I know he's coming off of a win that he needed over Saunders, but you know what? Even though he got the W and, you know, it went well for him getting a finish like he did, it still wasn't, I don't think a great performance. That said, I mean, Saunders isn't exactly an easy out, but that still doesn't bode well. I think Joban is a declining fighter, age 36. I mean, he's definitely a good fighter, solid fighter. He's obviously a fun guy to watch strike. He pushes a high pace. Again, he does have a bit of ground game to go along with it. So he's put himself in a very solid spot. I mean, he's a very good fighter at 170 pounds, but the truth is, again, being knocked out 3 times, I think he's a declined fighter. And I mean, he's hittable. Obviously his chin is a question mark, and he's facing a guy that loves to knock people out in Grant. I mean, that's what he does best. Grant has never been knocked out. He has that kind of knockout power, and he is definitely, as far as a striker goes, a threat to Joban here in this spot. I mean, the only issue with Grant that I have, honestly, he's a bit tentative at times. And if this fight gets to the scorecards, he has a way to lose decisions, obviously, close decisions. So that's not what you want to see in Grant. And I think if Joban does survive and not get clipped and get put out in this fight, he could very well steal another decision over Grant. So that's going to be the wild card here. And I understand, again, why people came in Grant's way. I do think he's got enough knockout power to clip Joban, and I'm going to probably pick him here as well. But honestly, just like the Turner fight earlier, I'm not confident in Turner. I think the hype is overblown. I'm not confident in Grant either. I haven't been that impressed with either guy here. So I'm picking both of them, but they're not confident picks because I think these guys are definitely vulnerable to some extent, and they're not living up to what they can be or what we expect from them. Because again, I think Grant is an ultra talented fighter. If he puts his foot on the gas a little bit more and is a little bit more aggressive at times, good things can come. I mean, look when he does let his hands go, what he's capable of. So he just needs to be a little bit more consistent in that regard. And again, it's a case where Joban, I think, is the more complete and better overall fighter. So that's why it's a little bit difficult here, as was the case with Ferville over Turner in the last spot too. So both of these fights are similar in my opinion, because I think, again, I'm going to pick guys that I really don't trust all that much, but their paths to victory here are set up and they're right there laid out in front of them. I mean, again, Grant, a dangerous striker with a chinny guy in front of him. Same thing with Turner. Turner, a very, good striker with a guy that's a bit chinny and defensively flawed in front of him as well. So I am going to pick Grant to win. I think he does knock Joban out along the way and get the W here. But again, not a confident pick, but it is a dog or pass situation, at least at the betting window, because I cannot lay the juice, cannot lay chalk on Joban at this point of his career, at least in a matchup like this. So the pick is Grant. And if you're betting this fight, be careful because, like I said, these are fights that can definitely go either way because all these guys are a bit flawed in some way at this point.
And I'm right with you. Alan Joban is a very capable fighter. I mean, this guy can mix things up. He's pretty good in the clinch. He's decent, not terrible on the ground. And he's a talented striker with some good power. But that chin is a huge question mark. And I think Dwight Grant definitely, with his kickboxing background, is more than capable of, finding a home on that chin and putting Joban out. But, Joban surprised me in the past with some impressive offensive performances where he was taking on people that were really dangerous and he was able to walk away with a victory. I mean, he did it against Mike Perry. He did it recently against Ben Saunders. He's taken on some tough fighters and walked away with some strong victories, but he's also been caught and finished by some powerful strikers like Nico Price, Albert Tumenov. Gunnar Nelson was able to steamroll through him and get a submission. So I definitely feel like Joban is capable of pulling off a victory here as long as he's able to protect his chin, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to do that, especially after a long layoff. I just think that Dwight Grant has been the more consistent fighter. Granted, I thought Grant's UFC debut was terrible, but he looked a lot better this last time out. Got a stoppage victory over a pretty tough opponent, and it seems like he's settled down now, got the UFC jitters out of his system. And as long as Grant fights his fight, I think that he's technical enough that Joban is not going to be able to throw anything at him that'll confuse Grant. And I think at some point Grant does find a home with a right or left hook, and Jouban gets sent crashing to the canvas. So, Jouban surprised me in the past, but I just, with a combination of his age, his chin, the layoff, I think it's only a matter of time in this fight until Grant, connects and potentially gets a knockout victory. So Grant's gonna be my pick. Now, moving up to the light heavyweight division, we have Eric Anders, who is 11-3, taking on Khalil Roundtree, who is 7-3 with 1 no contest. Now, Nick, where did this fight open, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Anders open -165, Roundtree at +125. Right now, over at BetDSI, we're seeing Anders -189, the comeback on Roundtree at +166. So again, large margins have tightened up, more action coming in, a little bit more action coming in Anders' way. Rightfully so, I think, in this spot too. So I think the early action Anders' way is the right way, really, because I know Roundtree is a very dangerous fighter overall. He's the better striker, actually, in this matchup. For sure. I mean, as far as technically speaking, I think he's a more dangerous striker as well. Roundtree offensively can bring it, man. I mean, guy definitely has some skill. He's no joke. I mean, he's proven that time and time again. He's got nasty knockout power with his hands or his feet. So he's legit, and he's a legit threat. But obviously, in my opinion now, I mean, defensively, there is a little bit of a concern. I mean, he has been rocked. He's had some cardio issues in the past as well. Obviously, he's coming off of a brutal knockout loss. And he's the type of fighter, I think, that, again, has some problems on the ground at times and is not really completed some of the things he needs to take care of in his game since the Ultimate Fighter. So I think Roundtree is getting better. He's improving, but not quite quick enough to face a guy like Anders. Again, this is another spot where Anders is at light heavyweight, and he's, been fighting at 180 pounds and 205 back and forth. He's had a few fights now at 205, obviously, and Anders isn't really that undersized for that weight class. So I think here, physically speaking, I mean, I think both these guys are strong enough, and they're going to actually, there's not going to be a big class discrepancy between the two. I mean, they're going to be pretty close to par, and Anders isn't going to be outpowered here or outmuscled by any means. In fact, I think Anders is going to be the one that's going to be able to get this fight to the ground or bully Roundtree up against the cage, slow this pace up a little bit, close the distance, and do what he wants with him. I trust Anders' chin a little bit more as well. So I think in a 3-round fight, really, if Roundtree doesn't keep that distance and land, and put Anders out of there, then he's going to probably lose this fight. So I understand, again, the action coming in Anders' way. He has more ways to win this fight. I believe in him as far as being a more complete mixed martial artist right now. And again, if he fights smart, he should be able to close the gap, get this fight to the ground, and then maybe, ground and pound his way to a victory over Roundtree here in this spot. So I think Anders, even though he hasn't really looked as good as we like to see him at times, recently, I think, he's fought obviously some tough opponents. That Theodoro loss could have easily went the other way. I mean, a lot of people, in his last fight thought that actually he won that fight. So I think he gets back on track here. I mean, he's got to be motivated, obviously, and obviously Roundtree wants to prove that he's back in the mix as well after that devastating loss. So a lot riding on this fight for both these guys, but I just think Anders is the better fighter, and it's going to probably show here. So hard not to pick Anders in this spot. I just think he's simply better. Again, those of you guys that bet Anders early on, I think you're on the right track. And it's a favored or pass situation if you're going to bet this fight here.
Yeah, Anders is moving back up to the light heavyweight division. As Nick mentioned, he's kind of bounced around. His last fight was at middleweight. This time he's back up to light heavyweight. And I think this is where he should probably stay. I think he cuts a lot of weight to make the middleweight weight class. And against Khalil Roundtree, he's actually really not going to be giving up a whole lot of size or anything. They're the same height. Roundtree has an inch and a half in reach. So I think Anders could find a home in the light heavyweight division. Now, against Roundtree, I think Anders needs to be a little bit cautious, especially on the feet, because while Anders is powerful and if he can connect, he could knock Roundtree out, but he also is just not at that same level of striking technique that Roundtree has. I mean, Roundtree, he can put together some combinations. He has some ferocious knockout power, and we've seen it. Roundtree knocked out Gokhan Saki, of all people. So, he clearly is a talented striker that is capable of putting on a display against just about anybody. But in his last fight, he got caught with a brutal elbow, and he got put out. So Roundtree's definitely going to be on the warpath here. Anders coming off of 3 losses in his last 4 fights, 2 of them by split decision, but the one that stands out to me is not his most recent loss against Theodorou. It's the loss against Thiago Santos, a guy that actually has a bit of a similar profile to Khalil Roundtree in that Santos likes to keep fights standing, mix things up with punches and kicks. And I think when Anders fought Santos, he got outclassed on the feet. I mean, it was a bit of a slugfest, but as that fight wore on, he really took the brunt of it. And if this fight stays standing, I think Roundtree will get the better of Anders. So if Anders is smart here, he uses that athleticism, being a former football player, and just tackles Roundtree, drags him to the canvas, and exposes him, because Roundtree, as talented as he is on the feet, he's not particularly good on the ground. We've seen that multiple times where, he was hurting people, and then the second the fight went to the floor, he got in huge trouble. So while Anders doesn't have the greatest ground game, he does have decent offensive wrestling. He's had some success with takedowns, 66% takedown, or 41% takedown accuracy, but he gets about 2 takedowns a fight. And I think with Roundtree not really being able to defend takedowns particularly well, I think that is absolutely the path to victory here for Anders, because if he stays standing, I think he loses. But if he mixes it up and gets this fight to the floor, he's going to win. So Anders is going to be my pick as long as he has that good fight IQ. But I am a little bit concerned that he gets drawn into a stand-up type of situation, and that's definitely where Roundtree can shine. But overall, Anders is going to be my pick. Now, moving on to the co-main event of the evening. In the middleweight division, we have the interim middleweight title on the line between Kelvin Gastelum, who is 15-3-1, and he's taking on the undefeated Israel Adesanya, who is 16-0. Now, Nick, where did this fight open, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Adesanya minus 179, the comeback on Gastelum at plus 156. So line margins have tightened up. There has been 2-way action in this fight. This fight's been all over the place a little bit. I mean, we've seen it bounce up to 200, a little bit over 200, then back down up to like minus 145, minus 150-ish. Now it's going back up to 179. So there is definitely a lot of 2-way action coming in on this fight, rightfully so. I mean, this is a fantastic fight, and there is some sharp action coming in on both sides as well. So, I mean, I know a lot of people, obviously, if you're on the Gastelum side, you're going to be like, how is there any sharp action coming in Adesanya, and vice versa? If you're on Adesanya's side, you're going to be like, how is anybody taking Gastelum here? Well, there's a lot of people that are, and they're believers in both of these guys right now, and they both deserve this shot. I mean, Adesanya's rise has been fast. It's been amazing, really, thus far, what he's been able to do, and I think the guy's getting more confidence. He's getting better fight by fight. His last fight with Anderson Silva was probably closer than we all suspected, but at the same time, I mean, it's not easy to fight a legend like Anderson Silva, and then the stylistic matchup that presented. I'm not even that surprised, by that. I mean, you're talking about one of the all-time greats in Anderson Silva. So this is a different stylistic matchup. Adesanya's going to have a big advantage in this fight when it comes to striking. He's going to have a big size advantage as far as length goes. He knows how to use that length. He's definitely the better technical striker in this spot. Gastelum, though, he does present some problems. I mean, he is a southpaw. Nothing that I think is going to throw Adesanya off all that much, but he does have some power. He's got knockout power. There's no question about that. He's, went out there and finished a lot of his opponents. He's got the wrestling background that he can rely on as well. And a lot of people believe that Adesanya is still vulnerable when it comes to the ground game, and he might be. I mean, Gastelum's definitely going to test that out. I believe his takedown efficiency is around 50%. So half the people he tries to take down, Gastelum gets him down. And Adesanya, even though his takedown defense is improving, and I mean, it wasn't really a big issue against a great wrestler like Brunson recently. I mean, that shows you the level of improvements he has made. I mean, he still could possibly be, put on his back, but I think he's going to be able to scramble up, get out of a bad spot, keep this fight upright. Obviously, in the clinch, he's going to have a big advantage. Again, in space, he's going to have a bigger advantage. So there's a lot to like about Adesanya in this fight. I mean, the hype is legit with this guy, honestly. I know Gastelum, again, he deserves to be in the spot. You cannot ever count this guy out, but I think stylistically this is a tough matchup. If Gastelum's not going to be able to get this fight to the ground repeatedly, or take Adesanya's back and maybe sink in a rear naked choke or something along that line, or land that one big punch on the feet, he's not going to be able to win this fight. Adesanya cannot point him. I think Adesanya, as this fight progresses, can land that spot. I mean, he's definitely an accurate striker. Underrated, probably knockout power. And he's capable of finishing a guy like Gastelum as well. So I think Adesanya could win by finish here. I think he can win on the scorecards as well. And I think he's just a better fighter. The size is going to matter here in this spot to go along with technical striking aspect as well. It's a favorite or pass situation. I do like Gastelum. I think he's a great fighter, but I just think, again, stylistically, what you're seeing in a matchup like Adesanya is just not good for him. And I think Adesanya is the right side here. So it's a favorite or pass situation again, but you got to play the line game. Wherever this line dips, when it dips down a little bit further, there's going to be some value on Adesanya. Obviously, if it climbs up over 2-1, you got to probably stay away, or it's a dog or pass situation at that point. But that said, I do like Adesanya. I think he does go out here and win this interim title. He wins this interim title, and he sets up a huge fight with Whitaker down the road, as we're all expecting. I think that's how it plays out. But make no mistake, Gastelum's going to show up, and he's going to be game in this fight. But the pick is Adesanya. And again, at the betting window, I would go to Adesanya as well.
And I'm going to side with Adesanya as well. I just really like the stylistic matchup in terms of the size disparity and how this guy is so incredibly capable of utilizing distance. He has a massive size and reach advantage on Kelvin Gastelum. Adesanya has 9 inches in reach. He's about 7 inches taller. I just think it's going to be difficult for Gastelum to hit him. Gastelum also does have a wrestling edge here, but I just don't think it's going to be so significant that he's going to be able to consistently shoot in, get takedowns, and keep Adesanya on his back. Because so far Adesanya has been able to fend off takedowns for the most part, and then even if he does get taken down, he gets back up. We saw that against Derek Brunson, and then when he did get back up, he really punished his opponent for shooting in. So I think Adesanya has passed all the tests, in my opinion, to prove that he's capable of fighting for a title at this point. And the striking difference is really going to be significant for me because Adesanya has better striking defense than Gastelum. He has a better pace than Gastelum. He's more accurate. And then you factor in the reach disparity and height disparity. I think Kelvin Gastelum, even though he might have more pure one-punch power than Adesanya, I just don't think it's going to matter because I think Gastelum's just going to have such a hard time actually finding a home for that right hand. Because Adesanya is just going to be jabbing him consistently in the face, throwing kicks, just mixing things up from the outside. As long as Adesanya kind of stays on his bicycle a little bit and plays Matador with Gastelum, I think that he can just pick Gastelum apart. I mean, he can go head, he can go body. Whatever's available, Adesanya has the accuracy and the reach to take advantage of it. So, Gastelum is a talented fighter and he's beat some very difficult opponents along the way to earn his opportunity at the belt. But, I just think this is a bad matchup for him. And unless he's able to get a takedown and really get some punishment from top position, when he has those openings, I think Adesanya just picks him apart over the course of 5 rounds, at least wins a decision, if not knocks Gastelum out along the way, because we have seen Gastelum get hurt in fights. I still think his chin's pretty strong, but Adesanya definitely is capable of being that type of fighter that can land that shot that you just do not see coming because he's able to set up his strikes so well. So I think this is a bad matchup for Kelvin Gastelum, and I think Adesanya walks away as the interim UFC middleweight champion. Now, this brings us to the main event of the evening. In the lightweight division, we have the UFC featherweight champion Max Holloway, who is 20-3, rematching Dustin Poirier, who is 24-5 with 1 no contest. Now, Nick, Where did this fight open, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Holloway opened minus 230. The comeback on Poirier plus 170. Again, check out the opening odds article on MMAOddsBreaker.com for Holloway and Poirier. Right now, looking over at BetDSI, we're seeing Holloway minus 204. The comeback on Poirier plus 179. So line margins have tightened up a little bit. Two action is coming into this fight, and it'll continue to come into this fight. You have two quality fighters going out of here for the interim light strap. Man, I mean, this should be a barn burner. I mean, you have two fantastic strikers, two well-rounded fighters. Obviously, Poirier is more than just your typical striker, but I mean, the guy has proven he loves to stand and bang, and I mean, he's capable of knocking people out. He's got the punching power actually advantage in this spot as well. I know Holloway is going to be a little bit faster. Obviously, he can put it on you a little bit more with the volume. He ends up putting on a relentless pace, and I mean, his cardio, everything that you like about Holloway, the precision in the striking, the toughness, his chin. I mean, he's been phenomenal to watch. I mean, he's definitely a deserving featherweight champion and deserving actually to get this spot actually at the 155 pound strap as well, because man, the guy fills out nicely. It's a big weight cut for him, 145 pounds, and he's not going to be undersized in the lightweight division either. So this is a good spot for Holloway. I mean, he's definitely a two-way type of fighter in both weight classes right now. And I think it's a good spot for him to prove that he's pound for pound one of the best fighters out there. Now, again, with Poirier, he's going to have a tough challenge. I mean, Poirier has proven time and time again that he's a warrior. I think he's getting better. The move up to lightweight for Poirier as well, I think has done well, even for his chin. He's absorbing the punishment a lot better than he was able to take it at featherweight for sure. And the knockout power has translated really well. So Poirier is a threat. He's confident. He's never been better at this point of his career. But I mean, you could say a lot of the same things about Holloway. Holloway obviously looking for a little bit of redemption. I mean, his UFC debut was a loss to Poirier. Even though that fight was fantastic. It was a barn burner as well. Holloway has improved, I think, more of the two. I mean, both of the guys have improved both by leaps and bounds for sure. But I think out of the two, I've been more impressed with Holloway. And if you look at that streak that he's on right now, it's ridiculous, man. I mean, if you look at the people he's beat, the quality of opponents, I mean, it's ridiculous what Holloway's doing right now. And I just think that it's his time. And I think that basically we're going to see a typical Holloway fight. I mean, it'll be close. It'll be competitive. Poirier is going to be out there giving it his all, but I think Holloway in the end is going to be the one, pulling away with the win, either a late stoppage or a decision win on the scorecards for Holloway. I just think that he's at an all-time pace right now to just break and shatter all sorts of records, become possibly double champ as well. I mean, amazing what he's accomplished and the continuing growth of his game overall. So much respect to both guys. I just think that Holloway's a little bit better at this point, and it's going to prove this Saturday night that he is the interim lightweight champion, and then we'll see what happens after that. So my pick is Holloway. I think it is a favored or pass situation. I know a lot of people are finding some value at Poirier, and you're not going to get Poirier at, decent plus money very often here. So that tells you one thing. So I can understand it, and I respect that opinion, and Poirier could very well come in here and possibly win this fight again. But I just think that it's Holloway's time, and it's hard for me not to pick him here and like the matchup, because I think that he can probably keep this fight upright, and he does what he does best and outpoints people and just, puts that pace on people. And I think that Poirier will eventually fall to that as well. So the pick is Holloway. I think he's going to be the new interim lightweight champion.
Yeah, the last time these guys fought, it was Holloway's UFC debut, and it was entertaining on the feet, but then Poirier did get it to the floor and was just the superior ground fighter at the time and was able to get a submission. And Max Holloway has improved so much as a fighter since then. I mean, he's currently on a ridiculous winning streak of, 12 fight winning streak. And he just seems unstoppable at this point. I mean, the last time out, he took on Brian Ortega, a guy that had a crazy good ground game and some serious knockout power. And Max Holloway just gave him the beating of his life, really, over the course of 4 rounds, eventually forcing a doctor stoppage. Max Holloway is incredible. I mean, the guy pushes an insane pace. He mixes it up, left hand, right hand. His stance is shifting. His footwork is phenomenal. His accuracy is ridiculous. I mean, he is just constantly throwing shots in your grill, and he's just forcing you to deal with it. And really the only way to fight back is to just try to get into a firefight with him. But I mean, he's just so comfortable in the pocket that if you do that, you're just going to eat about twice as many shots as you're dishing out. It's just incredible to watch, this guy perform. His takedown defense has improved dramatically. His ground game has gotten a lot better. So, with Poirier, I just don't think that the ground game is going to be even close to being capable of being exposed like it was the last time around. I mean, granted, that was ages ago. It really was. It was, back in 2012. So 7 years ago. So just think how much better Max Holloway has grown in those 7 years. Dustin Poirier has grown as well. I mean, he's definitely a dangerous fighter. I think that the move to lightweight has just been incredible for him. He's currently on a great run where he's beat some tough opponents. Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje, Anthony Pettis, Jim Miller. Those are some quality wins. And, to be able to finish all three of those last opponents in Alvarez, Gaethje, and Pettis, really speaks volumes for, the performance that Dustin Poirier is capable of. I think Poirier potentially has the most one-punch knockout power of anybody that Holloway's faced on his current 12-fight winning streak. So, even though Holloway has a tremendous chin, and I've never really even seen him stunned in a fight, Poirier potentially has the ability to change that. I mean, I don't know if he can knock Holloway clean out, but we could at least see Holloway hurt or staggered for the first time if they're standing toe-to-toe and Holloway just eats one. But another thing you have to factor in is Poirier doesn't have the greater ability. He got knocked out by Conor McGregor. He got knocked out by Michael Johnson. And he's been hurt in a few other fights. So I do feel like at some point Max Holloway is just gonna do what Max Holloway does, and that is wear his opponent down and eventually secure a stoppage victory. Holloway isn't the type of guy that usually destroys an opponent in seconds. He's the type of guy that just keeps wearing on you, and then eventually you just can't take it anymore. I mean, in his last 4 fights, he's got a stoppage after the 4-minute mark of the 3rd round in all 4 of them. So, at 4:50 of round 3, 4:13 of round 3, 4:51 of round 3, and then most recently at the end of the 4th round in between the 4th and 5th rounds. So, this guy can just put it on people and then make them quit eventually. And over the course of 5 rounds, I just think, Dustin Poirier is not going to be able to handle what Max Holloway is bringing. So I think, this will be really back and forth and fun at first, but Max Holloway is going to do what Max Holloway does. And I think that he, captures that interim, lightweight title, before the night is over. And I have Max Holloway as my winner and becoming the new interim UFC lightweight champ. So that'll do it for our full event breakdown for UFC 236. If we have a free play to give out, make sure to follow at MMAOB Premium on Twitter, because that's where we'll post it first. We can also notify you of our free bets via email alert if you prefer that method. Just send an email to at MMAOddsBreaker.com and we'll add you to our free bet mailing list. Special thanks to BetDSI. Good luck, everyone, and hopefully the betting gods are on your side this weekend.